Now we're going to speak about the 4-issue miniseries, Star Trek Discovery Succession. The cover date of issue number 1 is April 2018. And what I really appreciate about this series is that on the inside cover, it reads, "The following takes place after the events of Star Trek Discovery Season 1. The USS Discovery and its crew have returned to their original timeline. This is what happened next in the mirror universe they left behind." So it's a series written by Kirsten Beyer and Mike Johnson with art by Angel Hernandez. Just when we first got it off the newsstand, or I should say from the comic store, when we opened it up and saw that it totally takes place right after Season 1, how did you feel?
I loved it. I think it's a great idea to show what happened next in the mirror universe.
Exactly. Because we never know what truly happens in the mirror universe in the shows once the Prime Universe characters leave. But this has been done before. We know that DC Comics has done it before, showing what has happened at the same time, coinciding at the same time in the mirror universe. So they're following up this tradition that's been running for decades, having the comic version of what we would love to have seen on the screen if there was another series, or if we could have more of this drama.
Because the mirror universe is so popular in Star Trek. So yeah, and like they've done so many novels, and I used to read all the mirror universe novels I could find too, because I always loved it.
Totally. So it starts out with Michael Burnham having a rather awkward bedtime conversation with Lorca.
And
what do you think about that?
Well, I think it says that part takes place in the past, right? Because Lorca died by the end of Discovery Season 1.
Exactly.
Spoiler, hey.
So it's going back and forth. Yes. It starts out with a prequel of sorts.
It has
a year
flashbacks.
previously.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're seeing how different things are in the mirror universe with the radical relationships that are happening.
So what we find out in this one is that Emperor Georgiou had a cousin, which was never mentioned on the show, but on this, so in this universe, she has a cousin named Alexander. Mm-hmm. And the way he is drawn in this comic book, you know, did they have the same comic artist as Marvel Comics? Because he looks a lot like Loki, at least from the movies.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I really enjoy this art. Angel Hernandez does an excellent job with the IDW series, because it's funny you mention Marvel Comics, because in order to draw Star Trek comics and make it feel like the show, artists have to know how to draw average people, normal people. Yes. Not super heroic. You don't want everyone to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They have to be able to have the decorum and demeanor of average, ordinary people. But when action comes forward, which there is action in this series, he's able to express this.
He does an excellent job. Yeah, I like this because I like all the colors and the way, and the glamour of the Empire, the background scenery, all of that was very good in this. Yeah,
visually, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Especially since it's through the comics, too, that we're finding out more about these background characters. Now that we're done with Season 2, we're finding out more about these background characters, but they're given names in this series. And when we first read this at the time, that was awesome to find out more about this ensemble cast.
I love that the story uses all the familiar faces, too, such as Amanda. And it actually has Harry Mudd.
Yes.
And he's this clean, good guy. Well, of course, he's against the Empire because the Empire is evil. So he's like...
In comparison to the Empire, he's a great guy.
Right, right. I mean, so they made him the mirror opposite, of course, of the Prime Universe, Harry Mudd. And then we also get to see Laurel in this.
Mm-hmm. And up until this point, this is the most we've seen of Arium. She has a major role in this series.
And when they made this comic, I don't know if they knew what would happen to her in Season 2. They probably hadn't even planned it yet.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the comic series, the way that because now that we're going back and rereading them for the podcast reviews, we're seeing that there's some continuity issues. So we know that they are making up the seasons as they go along. It's not a Game of Thrones where everything is fleshed out. They're kind of figuring it out. And since the comics, what they said about the comics are canon unless they're not canon anymore.
Right.
So,
well, I kind of had the idea that they were doing that with Deep Space Nine as well. They planned out each season beforehand, but we don't know how much in advance they planned. I don't think they planned, like from season 1 to season 7, they had no idea that it was going that direction.
We know that giant, there's no real story arc, I'd say, for season 1 through 7 of Deep Space Nine. But the Dominion War, do you think that was planned out?
Not from the beginning, no. But they introduced the Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been in season 1 when they first mentioned the Dominion, maybe season 2.
Yeah, remember in our rewatch we noticed that there was a hint at the Dominion?
They did mention it in an episode with that featured the Ferengi, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, getting back to the comic.
That's more things that we could research to see at what point was Deep Space Nine the major war story arc? Was that developed all at once or little by little?
Probably little by little.
Yeah.
After Babylon 5 came on.
Oh, of course, yes. But getting back to this, a lot of attention to Arium. Oh, this is how we deviated off. We didn't know if they knew what was going to happen to Arium in season 2. Don't know.
So another part, an important part of this plot is Alexander. So he becomes the emperor because Georgiou gets killed, and he really just declares himself emperor because they mentioned somewhere that Michael Burnham was the one that was supposed to be the heir to the throne. Oh, but they still don't know that she's still alive at this time. So Alexander declares himself the emperor, and what he wants is to get rid of all humans. He's that type of racist. He just thinks that only the human race deserves to survive.
He wants to get rid of all non-humans.
Yes. Did I say that?
No.
Or did I say... Okay, sorry.
Yes. So he wants to get rid of all the non-humans.
Yes.
And so we're seeing more alien races in as well. Andorians.
Yes, there's a prominent Andorian in this, yes. And then we get to where Arium says that all her life she... Yeah, they changed her history from what was revealed in season 2. And this one she says all her life she's never been quite human. Like she's always been part robot all her life is what she implies in this.
Yes. And you know what I think it is. I mean, we've discussed this before. I mean, it's just one of the things that frustrates me is the inconsistencies. But I feel that the reason why they got rid of the character Arium in Discovery is because it's so expensive to put that makeup on and so time consuming.
Yes, and you were saying that makeup is probably more expensive than doing the Klingon makeup.
Because the Klingon makeup is just one mask, essentially, and they have to fill in the holes.
Yes.
Of course, it takes time, there's effort, there's some skill level to it, but the Arium one, if you watch the videos of them putting it on her, it's a whole nother level of unique artistry. And then on top of it, they have to change her voice and make sound effects for her moving it. I mean, there's so many layers to her character for just being a background character.
It's a lot of work for someone in the background. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, hey, did they just can her because they want to save cost for season 3? And then, oh, surprise, the actress. They want to give the actress a job, so they give the actress
because she was under contract, so they couldn't really get rid of the actress. So they bring her back as a human without the special makeup.
But the beautiful thing in comics, it takes the same amount of ink to draw a human as it is an alien.
Yes.
So we don't have to worry about those oddities in the comic book world.
But actually, since this is the mirror universe, it could be explained that way. Arium in the mirror universe has always been part human, part robot.
True.
In the Prime universe, she just didn't become part robot until after the accident.
Yes. That's it. Within the mirror universe, there's so many things that we just chalk up to the timeline being a little twisted.
Right.
Makes sense. I like that reasoning.
And so as we go on, now Amanda gets killed in one of these, in the third comic. Mm-hmm. So that happens. And I believe they said that Sarah had already died.
And another thing that's in issue 3 that's unique was the last panel. It zooms in on Ariam's eye as she's reading the computer screen.
So that's a great visual. So,
but doesn't that harken back to the Red Angel? Remember the beeps in her eye? They would show the reflection.
The control.
Yes, control.
Yeah.
Remember how there'd be the three red dots reflecting in her eye? Well, look at this. This comic had virtually the same pacing of her looking at a computer screen.
That's very interesting.
So I'm wondering, did Kirsten Beyer, did she have any foresight into what some of the visual effects were going to be for season 2, or is this a coincidence?
That's interesting.
If we ever see her at a con, we've got to ask her about it. And how did the series wrap up? What did you enjoy about it? Rolling into issue 4.
The Michael Burnham and Alexander dynamic, because he always saw her as more of someone who wasn't really part of the family because she was adopted. Mm-hmm. And he was jealous of her because Georgiou loved her more than him.
So I think it's interesting now. When we first read this, we didn't have season 2 of Discovery, right. But now that we have season 2, we're able to compare it with Prime Universe Michael and her relationship with Spock.
Yes. And so she and Spock were close for a while as children. Mm-hmm. And then something happened, but that was just because of her insecurities.
So it's interesting to counter Mirror Universe Michael Burnham
with the Prime Michael Burnham. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they both had family issues, didn't they? And they both had, and she lost her natural appearance in both universes, right? And
she has a lot to overcome in both universes.
Yes. So eventually Michael kills Alex in this story. Oh, spoiler, okay. And we're always,
we don't even announce that anymore. But
I know.
This comic's been out for a year. This comic's been out for a year. If you haven't read it yet, get the trade paperback if you don't get the original issues. But this is a series, especially, let's continue on. What happened? How did it end? It's an awesome ending.
Ariam.
Yes.
Winds up becoming the Empress. And you know, through some technical thing, which we don't have to get into, but she basically becomes the Empress in the end, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
But the thing is now that is one of the weird things about the Mirror Universe, because, you know, you kill someone and take their place, and it's like, oh, it seems to happen so much. It would really cause chaos, way too much chaos for an empire to survive.
Oh, real world that could never happen.
I mean, right, really.
Yes. But it was a fun series. I really did like this series. The previous Discovery series, I didn't care for. The
Klingon story wasn't as good.
It wasn't. It was a stretch. This one, it had enough action, had enough dialogue, it had enough character development that rereading it was enjoyable. What do you say?
I agree. This one was a fun story, and I do like that it introduced a new character that we don't have, that probably doesn't exist in the Prime universe, and the fact that it still made Michael good-hearted, I think. Mm-hmm. So I mean, yes. So it had those things going for it, and it was a good story.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.